And tonight, summer may be coming to an end, but this program is going to be hot. In this program, fine art photographer Doug Mattice will take you along on a photo shoot at Burnside Farms. He'll explain the importance of having a vision and why that's more important than worrying about the rules of photography. You'll discover why you should always strive to make the extra effort when taking photographs, that little adjustments when shooting can make a huge difference in your photography, and applying additional heat or effort to whatever task or activity you undertake as a photographer will help you achieve the primary objective, a successful shoot. Doug is a photographer, an educator, and a business coach to serious photographers who want to build a lucrative photography business. He acquired his business experience by operating a part-time portrait studio from his home for over 35 years. He received his craftsman degree from the Professional Photographers of America and has continued to hone his craft by studying with some of the most successful photographers across the country. Through personal coaching, training, and workshops, he helps photographers like you build, market, and monetize their business better than ever before. Tonight, Doug Mattice.
Good evening, everybody. Well, I'm excited to be your speaker tonight. I created this program to get you into a creative mindset. So you're excited to go out and create beautiful images that tell a story and cause people to see the world differently. So I know we are still doing this remotely. However, there will be times when I ask for your thoughts and input. So please be ready to write your thoughts inside the chat, and so we can all benefit. There are some very talented photographers in this club, and I would like to use the chat tonight as a way to maximize the critical learning points that I'm going to bring up. So before we start and before I share my screen and so forth, I want you to tell me, why do you photograph? Some of us, do photography as a hobby, and others do it as a business. So I'd like you to type in the chat and tell me, why do you photograph? So go ahead and do that right now.
Doug, when you flipped that on, the chat disappeared, at least off of mine.
It's actually off of mine too. John, are you seeing the chat or?
Just need to reopen it from the bottom of the screen.
Oh, okay, yeah, then it pops up in the middle.
Yeah, there you
Yeah, I
go.
can see it. I've got mine back open. So here's one: stress relief, a hobby, and takes me to my happy place. Hobbyist. Daryl said it's a passion. Greg says he likes enjoying learning a new skill. And Nancy's interested in maybe turning it into a business. Paul would like to share what I see with friends and family. Sarah says it's fun and it makes up for the fact that I can't draw. Interesting. Ed said, I photograph as a hobby, and now that I'm retired, want to turn it into at least a part-time business because he enjoys the creativity. Great, Ed. Charles shoots for self-fulfillment. Very good, Charles. Rebecca says, it brings me joy, a beautiful flower, a cool animal. Likes that. And Stuart says, it's a hobby and passion. So that's great, guys. I just wanted to kind of get an idea, get a feel for that. Okay, before we get started, or just tell me, John, everybody can see the screen okay? I'm going to get rid of the chat box. Everybody see the title slide all good?
Yes, we can see it.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, and you can hear me fine, okay, we're going to get started then. All right, so the name of this program is 212 Degrees. which is what I call the extra degree to taking your photography to the next level. So let's get started. Well, let's see here. There we go. So at 211 degrees, water gets hot, but at 212 degrees, it begins to boil. And with boiling water comes steam. And steam can power a locomotive. So applying just one extra degree of temperature means the difference between something that is simply very hot and something that generates enough force to power a large machine. So tonight I will show you that seemingly small things can make a tremendous differences in your photography. The possibilities are endless. So let the number 212 serve as your constant reminder. Let it be your new way of thinking, your new way of acting. And when practiced consistently through your photography, that one extra degree will make you stand out from your competition. So ladies and gentlemen, it's time to turn up the heat. It's time to take your photography to the next level. Welcome to the Loudon Photo Club 2022-2023 September kickoff meeting. So my name is Doug Mattice, and like you, I love photography. Still, more importantly, I help photographers improve their craft so they can build, market, and monetize their business better than ever before. So I am thrilled to be here to kick off a new and exciting year with the Loudon Photography Club. I know I've been a member for quite a while, and this is a very talented group, and I look forward to seeing your work in our monthly competitions and on our Facebook page. So let's tonight's program get started here. So I have a poll for you, and let me know, John, on this. How many of you have photographed the sunflowers at Burnside Farms located in Oaksville? Can you let me know in the chat? I'll pop that up on there. Got a couple of yeses. Tulips, okay. Yeah, I know they have different flowers at different times of year. All right, so it might be a mixed bag here. So what I have is a video, which is just 1 minute long, but for those who've never been, here's just a short video. So I want to just give you an introduction there of what it looks like, and it was beautiful. So a few weeks ago, I went there with my friend and Loudon Photo Club member, Daryl Lansey, who's with us tonight, and spent most of the morning photographing the beautiful sunflowers. So tonight, I would like to share my process of how I analyze a location, establish a vision for the subject I am photographing, and create storytelling images that solicits emotion from those who view the photograph. So we have all sat and watched speakers show beautiful images from their travels, but I want only to show photographs from this one photo session to prove that you can create something that feeds your soul no matter where you are. So taking photographs is what most people do. They raise their camera, whether a smartphone or a mirrorless camera, and document what's in front of them. The images are good enough if they're well exposed and sharp. These photographs often get to the 211-degree level, which is hot based on our analogy. These photographs work well on social media and get likes and shares, and generally fuel the appetite of the hobbyist. But making photographs, on the other hand, is more purposeful. The photographer carefully evaluates the scene for lighting, composition, and the moment. There exists intentionality, a series of choices that leads the photographer to increase an image sparked by a unique blend of awareness and imagination. So it doesn't rely solely on luck, but the presence of luck is always welcomed. So earlier I asked, why do you photograph? We reviewed some of your answers, and now I want to share why I photograph. So when I photograph landscapes or seascapes, flowers, textures, and other things with a macro focus, I try to transform or elevate what I see. I aim to convey more about the subject than what it only looks like. So people are always in a hurry and pass by so many beautiful things on any given day, and I use my camera to capture what others often overlook. And finally, I try to show what is beyond words by creating storytelling and emotional photographs that feed and move my soul. So let me ask you, we talk a lot about finding your vision. So what does it mean to find your own vision? Here are some things that come to mind when I think about how I try to find my vision. So to me, finding your vision allows you to speak an authentic voice. It allows me to think as an individual and step away from the way others think or the way others see. Having a vision is to allow me to see what is uncommon or often overlooked. I like going places and being deeply moved or be in awe of what I'm photographing. I love to be able to create work that is poetic and lyrical and beautiful to you as a viewer and me as a photographer. So ultimately, photography requires you to make choices above just selecting the ISO, the f-stop, and shutter speed. And to do all this, you have to feel something. And I think we all do in this club. We love photography, and then we love it so much we commit to it, and we love to be able to create beautiful images for ourselves, our friends, and our family. Oh, bless you. So I like to think of vision in terms of story. So I do that because our brains are hardwired for stories. If you study business and so forth and selling, it's an old thing that facts tell, but stories sell. And it's the idea that if there's a story behind an image and we see these stories, and when we see the image, we can connect much better to it. So think of your vision in terms of that story. And what is it you're trying to tell the viewer who's not there as you're behind the camera? So in order for that to start working for me, it starts with the gear. I ensure I have the right gear to capture my storytelling images. So like you, I use a professional DSLR camera. I use Canon to capture my artistic images, but I begin my sessions using my iPhone 12 Pro Max. And I'll explain about that in a second. So the lenses, right, that I use are the 100 millimeter macro. I love my 70 to 200 millimeter. For a wider look, I like the 28 to 70. and I've fallen in love with a lens called the Lens Baby Velvet 85. Now, this may sound a little different, but I actually meter a lot of my scenes with my Sekonic light meter, and I am a diehard tripod user and often use a cable release, especially when doing long exposures. So that gives you an idea of the kind of gear that I show up with when I went to Burnside. So I think this is important as photographers, is that we want to first establish the story or the vision that we want to tell. So when I get to a location, I like to assess it, including the time of day, the lighting, the shadows, how deep are they? Other variables like how many people are around. Are there any bugs? I'm not a big bug fan, big spider fan, any of that. Are there any bugs around? Anything I got to worry about? Or are there any other distracting elements that I have to deal with? And then finally, what am I actually going to photograph? So on this particular day, there were very few clouds. This is an image that I did with the iPhone, but there are very few clouds on this day. It was 10 o'clock in the morning, so it wasn't, sunrise, sunset, golden hour, any of that. And it was very, very hot. And we're looking like, mid 90s by the time we finished up. So my goal was I wanted to leave the session with some beautiful and unique sunflower images, along with some fresh flowers for my wife, which was actually more important to her than any photo that I would ever create there. But she made sure that I brought her some fresh sunflowers. So I had never been to this location, so I needed to do some baseline shots with my iPhone to see what other visitors were seeing. Because as a photographer, I want to create something different. And if I'm selling my work, I have to be able to show something that's different. So I use my iPhone because a lot of people show up at this place with an iPhone and they're taking nice images with that. And I just want to use a baseline. So once I have a good baseline, I think about the story that I want to tell before worrying about the rules of photography, which is, you all know them, the rule of thirds, leading lines, color harmony, depth of field. We can easily get hung up on the technical side of photography, which can negatively impact our creative thinking. So for me, photography and the results of what we create should ultimately give us joy. And that's why I build my vision and storyline first. Is there any questions on any of this so far? I think I can pull up the chat. Are we all good?
No questions yet.
All right, everybody's still there. Okay, good. All right, see if I can get to the next thing. So here is a sample of a couple of my iPhone images that I took as a baseline. So as you can see, the exposure is good. The colors are vibrant. But to me, they are more documentary photos than anything really artistic. Would you agree with that? So let me know in the chat. You getting anything on the chat, John? Here we go. All right, thanks, Daryl. Yeah, Daryl agrees. It's just, they're iPhone images, right? They're okay. They're okay, but they're not artistic. So now that I have my baseline images, I got to ask my question, what can I do to add sizzle to the steak? So what can I do to separate my work from others who have photographed before me, especially in this one location? So I'm a big fan of using a tripod for the following reasons. And the main thing for me, it's the stability and the sharpness. You do get sharper images than hand holding, in my opinion, if you really look at it. But more importantly, it forces you to take your time you're moving a lot more slowly with a tripod, and you're getting your legs right, and you're getting your composition the way you want it. And I think being on a tripod will actually lead to stronger compositions. And I like the ability to, what I call, look in the corners. So a lot of times, when we're out photographing and then we come back and we download them, we've got things that either should not be in the corners or are in the corners that, ultimately take away from the photograph. So I like to try to get clean corners when I'm looking through the viewfinder on a tripod. The other advantage to me is that I can keep the ISO at a lower setting, which of course can lead to less noise. And for me, I know most of you, well, if you're doing landscaping, you're probably doing tripod, but if you're going out, probably like a location like this, may not be using a tripod. So again, this is that 212-degree factor. It can be a difference maker over time if you start using the tripod and get in the habit of using a tripod. Now, that being said, but sometimes handheld is just better. So I am a big proponent of the tripod, but ultimately I do take my camera off the tripod for ease of use. To me, it is faster shooting. It's a little more fun, to be honest with you. And, you kind of feel more personal with it in your hands and up next to you, and then you're walking around a subject. So I know that for most people, that's why they do it handheld. They just feel more at ease, more comfortable than having to deal with a tripod. But for me, I would say when I go on location, I'm using a tripod probably 80 to 90% of the time, and then I'll handhold for some. So I took my base images and with the iPhone, and then I turned around and put my camera on the tripod, and I started with a 28 to 70 millimeter lens to actually begin creating the photographs that I'm, had my vision for. So if you look at the image on the left, right over here, okay? So the image on the left picks up the sky and does an okay job utilizing a shallow depth of field, but I didn't like that there were no clouds in the sky, and that the lighting, was about 10:30 in the morning, was pretty harsh. So also I was not too fond of the brown spot on the flower on the left. And that was, right here, if you can see it where I'm pointing, but yeah, there's a brown spot. So it was okay. But then I went to image 2, which featured the back of the flowers. And that was very interesting because the sunflower from the back and the lighting coming through is very, very nice and very different. And I wanted all the flowers to be in focus. So I had I'm shooting about f/16, f/22 there. And then shooting from the side also brought out the texture of the petals. And the trees helped eliminate most of the sky. And then number 3 featured the flowers from the front. It completely eliminated the sky, and the depth of field I thought was pretty good. So my conclusion from using the 28 to 70 was, well, it's okay, but let's switch to the 70 to 200 lens and kind of move in a little tighter. So I have here, what's the temperature? We were talking about, is it 211? Is it hot? Is it 212? Is it boiling, with steam? And for me, it was less than 211 degrees. Okay. And the reason was I thought it was a little bit better than an iPhone image, but nothing with a real artistic feel to it. So I put on the 70 to 200. And if you look at the top left, this shot started to get me closer to my vision. When I looked at it, it reminded me of someone speaking to a crowd. I didn't like how the sky cut across and broke the image into 3 separate layers. So being on the tripod, I recompose the image, and if you look at the bottom left, I lowered the legs to eliminate the sky and trees and pointed the camera down slightly to pick up more of the sunflowers. So this image was chosen for post-production editing, and you will see the final result soon. Now, if we look at the middle centerpiece here, a butterfly appeared behind me, and I quickly composed that shot with my tripod. And again, notice how clean the corners are. And you get this by working, again, more slowly on a tripod. To me, this was an acceptable image, but by waiting patiently and being on the tripod and not having to move, I was able to capture the bottom image, which shows the butterfly's face and antenna. So the sunflower is also composed better because the petals at the top are now included up here versus they were cut off up here. So the main thing is there was no face or antenna here, but just by waiting for a little bit, he popped up his head in there. And then the right top, I found a completely different looking sunflower, which I really loved the colors of the flower. But then I recomposed and felt the bottom image was stronger and kind of told a different story. So here, what's the temperature? Well, I think now I'm getting a lot closer. I've at least reached the 211 mark, and I'm not boiling yet out of the camera, but I kind of know in my mind, I've got something here that will kind of get me to that 212 mark. So switching then to a macro lens, my 100 millimeter macro, really helps me to zero in on my subject and look versus see. So let me explain that. So as photographers, we are taught to see the light. I'm sure you've been told that before, which, really is essential to getting good photographs. However, I think we also need to look for something new along the way. So these images are straight out of the camera with no adjustments in Lightroom. And again, being on the tripod allows me to slow down and look in the corners and compose more efficiently than if I was hand holding. And this macro lens allowed me to capture the details of the sunflowers and gave me a different emotional feel than what I was getting before. So hopefully you can see how my thought process pushes me toward a more artistic, emotional feeling image just by switching lenses and then, working with what I have. So this gets me into the Lens Baby Velvet 85. I really enjoy photographing flowers with the Lens Baby Velvet 85 lens. This lens will help you differentiate yourself from other photographers while giving your work a more artistic appeal. So the Velvet 85, for those who don't have one, is a manual focus lens that works great on a tripod. And the thing I like about it, if you look at the lower left of the sunflower and then how it fades off into blur a little bit, is that you can control what is in focus in the transition to either blur or bokeh through the Lens Baby. So notice how much emotion is portrayed by the colors and light in these images compared to the standard photos I felt I was getting at the beginning of the shoot. So to me, the Lens Baby Velvet 85 helps me get to that 200-degree mark quicker because of its unique perspective and features compared to other lenses we're used to. So let me ask you in the chat here, let me bring that back up. First of all, anybody have any questions? Any questions at all on what we've covered so far? Also, I'd like you to answer in the chat, how many of you who have been to Burnside Farms have actually photographed the tractors there? Let me know in the chat if you've if you stopped, and they have two old time tractors parked right there. Has anybody photographed any of the tractors? Okay, Daryl went back and did it. No, okay. Anybody else who's been there? Okay, photographed the kids on the tractors. Nikki said she didn't recall seeing them. Yeah, they're definitely there. There's two of them. They're back toward like a little play area. Okay, so anyway, I just wanted to do this because after doing what I just showed you, I felt that I had achieved what I had set out to do, which was to capture the beauties of the sunflowers fully. And then as I started to look around, I saw a couple of old farm tractors there that captured my attention. So I ended up putting on a 100mm macro lens on my camera, and I actually took it off the tripod and began letting curiosity take over. And this is important from the creative side. Asking yourself, what if, or has this ever been taken before? So I handheld these images, or let me say that again. I handheld the camera for these images and then look for storytelling vignettes and detail versus capturing the whole subject. So here's a few of the images that I captured. So as I mentioned earlier, it was a sweltering day, and I'd been there already for about 2 hours. I could easily have gone home, but instead I wanted to take the time to find some more unique macro subjects that I, could photograph. So when I'm doing this type of work, I always look for textures and rust, slivers of light and colors that I can work with in post-production to create an artistic piece that I can sell on my website or at art shows. So I know that they may not appear to be the most exciting images coming out of the camera, but with my artistic vision, Lightroom, and Photoshop skills as the tools, I feel like I can bring these images to life. And, experimentation and curiosity are crucial to creativity. So, when you have your camera, feel free to play, because when you play, you have fun, right? And someone mentioned in the group, they photograph for themselves, and that's what it's about. Some of us have clients and so forth, but ultimately take the time to do some photography for yourself and whatever feeds your soul, right? And so these were just some of the images I got when I was photographing the tractors. So now I get home, right? And I did bring my wife some fresh flowers, in case anybody wants to know. But yeah, I got the fresh flowers, got home. And then once the images are downloaded to my computer, I then settle in to kind of bring my vision to life. So each fine art image that I edit can take anywhere between 30 minutes to 2 hours to complete, depending on what I'm trying to achieve. I shoot in a RAW format and do my initial processing in Lightroom Classic. I love the new masking features and incorporate the gradient and radial filters to control what I want my viewer to see and experience. So once I'm satisfied with my initial edits, I send the image to Photoshop for minor adjustments like level adjustments, adding textures to the image, and any spot healing. I like to do the spot healing in Photoshop versus Lightroom. So I also work in Topaz Studio to create a more painterly effect if the image warrants a more artistic feel. So, and then once all that's done, all the images are then saved and sent back to Lightroom for eventually exporting to my printer, which is, Bay Photo Lab, and to have all my prints made. So I'm going to get ready to show you here some before and after images that I created from this session to give you a sense of how my process ends. So like I mentioned, I like to give my photographs a painterly feel when I can. And I do this through Topaz Studio. And then I bring it into Photoshop, and I have some special brushes that I use to even mix the pixels a little bit more. And I do that in Photoshop. So I know some of you are purists when it comes to photography, but I'm not a purist. And I want to be able to create something that is unique and helps tell a story that can bring an emotional connection to the viewer. So people buy for emotional reasons, and you can help people become emotional when seeing your work by telling the story behind the photograph. And I think this is part of being a good fine art photographer is how do you bring somebody who wasn't there into your story and then appreciate your vision to the point that they would actually want to own this piece. So as I mentioned earlier, to me, when I photograph this, and then as you see the final piece, to me, it looks like someone speaking to an audience, a crowd, kind of like a minister and then the congregation, or a politician in the crowd or whatever. So it led me to, look at that as the main person and the crowd in the background. So I titled this piece Preaching to the Choir. And like I said, I gave it more of a painterly feel. And I have a sample here of how this could look in somebody's home. This particular piece of the butterfly, all I really did was just darken down the background slightly, and I added a catch light in the eye of the butterfly. So it just added that little speck of white, painted that in Photoshop, and darkening down the images just a little bit. And then I call this piece the pollinator. So when I was photographing this piece of metal and chain, I could see the colors in the rust and the metal. And once I got it into Photoshop, I knew I could maximize the colors to create a unique abstract piece. So what you see in the upper left is out of the camera, and then colorful decay is what I did after enhancing the colors in Photoshop. And then to me, this image would look pretty cool as a metal piece, or in a large mat and frame. And I try to think about how it would look as a fine art piece displayed in someone's home. So here's another sample of how that could look, just to bring out the colors. And again, it's abstract. It gets just people to talk about it. This one here is, I like the vintage rustic look of this oil pressure gauge. This was off the tractor, and I enhanced the colors and actually used a brick wall texture to accent the rust. I actually printed this on metal to give it a unique abstract look, and which I know for me, this was different from most of the photographs I create. I love to photograph flowers and landscapes, and love to go to the beach. And so this was a little bit of a challenge and different for me. But again, it helps feed my soul. I know that probably won't sell a lot of these, but it gives my audience something different to look at and think about. But the colors came out from Bay Photo, very vibrant, and on metal, definitely a unique look. And I call this one Stressed but No Pressure. This image, in a sense, I really challenged myself with this one particularly, because if you look at the top left, which is out of the camera, I loved how the light was hitting the gear shift knob on the tractor. And that particular time of day, it was very clean and simple. Plus, I liked how it transitioned into a shadow, but there's still detail in the shadow. So the initial photo out of the camera reminded me of a planet in orbit. So then I put a texture over the image, and then I changed the blend mode to hard light in Photoshop and started adding and blending other elements to create this piece, which I call night drop. So, like I said earlier, photography should be fun first, and composites are a fun way and a neat way to create a unique fine art piece. And so this kind of gives you an in-depth look at how I create storytelling, fine art images that I can sell online and at art shows. So I hope you learned something this evening and that you can implement it into your work. And as we begin this new year with the Loudon Photo Club, the key is to be able to take action so you can take your photography to the next level. And things you can do is enter the print competitions. We have one coming up in 2 weeks, what I did this summer. You want to show up monthly to these events and kind of listen to the different speakers, because each one's going to be unique. And we go, we research out the speakers and we try to get topics that you like and can enjoy, and more importantly, try to improve your photography. And another way is to create a folder on your computer and call it a portfolio folder. And as you go out and photograph things and you really like them and feel like you have your best work, go ahead and put it in that portfolio folder and, let those things add up over the year. And you'll be surprised how your photography improves, and be able to look back and be able to show people your top images for the coming year. So can you do me a favor? In the chat, can you tell me what your biggest takeaway was this evening? And as you think about the upcoming year, what you start doing, or what will you start doing, stop doing to take your photography to the next level? So can you let me know? What was your biggest takeaway, and or what is it that you want to start doing this coming year or stop doing to try to take your photography to the next level? So go ahead and add that in the chat for a second, and then we will wrap up. Okay. Clark said he'd like to use his tripod more. That'd be great. Rebecca would love to get a lens baby. Someone asked, does it have the Canon mount? And the answer is yes. I have no issues on my Canon camera putting the lens baby on. Daryl says he'd like to have a clear vision of what you are trying to achieve as an end photo. So that's the vision going in and thinking about it before actually taking the photo. Audrey says the same thing. Just take some more time, think about my photographs. And that's where, again, a tripod could be very helpful there. All right, so we got some good takeaways, folks. I appreciate that. People are going to commit to using the tripod more. Okay, I will go out to different locations and I'll look for people on the tripod and see if you attended my presentation tonight. So, all right, well, I appreciate that, guys. And I went too far. Let me go back one. Oh, sorry, guys. All right, so as we wrap up, I want to leave you with this little inspiration. But we are the artist. We work with light and shadow and create our images from inspiration and vision. Authentic photography has a voice. It speaks to us. It tells us an unforgettable story. Photography reminds us that light is all there is, never dies, and will forever shine. As photographers, we are the weavers of light. So make every shutter click your story going forward. So I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. And I want everyone to take their photography to the 212-degree level this coming year. So here's my contact information and phone number if you'd like more clarity on anything that I said this evening. And then with that being said, I'll turn it back over to John for any final questions or comments. So thanks, guys.
Thank you, Doug. Thanks for a great presentation and ideas and suggestions. I think, given the comments and reaction of the group, I'm thinking that some folks are going to be trying some different things. Any last comments, questions? Hearing none. All right. Go ahead and stop the recording.